I'm Sarah Whitman, 35 years old, and I've spent most of my adult life helping other people get their finances in order, including my own family. One Thursday evening, I sat down to balance my books, just like I always did. That's when I noticed a charge for over $3,000 from a place called Party Paradise. I don't throw parties. I don't even attend many. A few clicks later, I was staring at photos of my brother's baby shower, the one I wasn't invited to. The decorations, the catering, the custom embroidered onesies, it was all paid for by me. Before I go any further, let me know where you're listening from in the comments and tap that like and subscribe button if you've ever found out someone took advantage of your generosity without even telling you. To understand how things reach this point, you'd have to know a little about how I was raised. My parents, Don and Karen, used to run a small hardware store in town before the 2008 crash wiped out most of their savings. I was just out of college then, working long hours at a credit union and juggling 2 side jobs to stay afloat. While other people my age were piling up student debt I had pushed through with scholarships and night shifts, I never asked for much. I just wanted stability. By the time I turned 25, my parents were on the brink of losing their home. I stepped in the only way I knew how, created a budget, negotiated with creditors, and sent them $1,500 a month to keep things moving until Dad found work again. No one asked me to, but it never occurred to me not to help. Then there's my brother Ryan, 2 years younger but always seemed 10 behind. He dropped out his senior year after racking up over $40,000 in loans. I helped pay most of it down, told myself it was a one-time thing. He met his wife Brooke at a barbecue. 6 months later, they were planning a vineyard wedding for 250 guests. They said they just needed help with a few things. I ended up footing the catering bill. Ryan's the kind of person who makes friends in line at the grocery store, charming, easygoing, quick to laugh. My parents always said he just needed time to find himself. Meanwhile, I was the overachiever, but somehow never quite warm enough, never quite fun. I showed love through spreadsheets and deposits. They didn't always see that. When Brooke got pregnant, everyone lit up. My parents talked about nursery themes and top-of-the-line strollers before the first ultrasound photo even came in. I gave them a real gift, opened a 529 college savings plan, and funded it with $5,000. Brooke thanked me with a polite smile and said it was practical. Ryan texted me later. We kinda hoped for something we could actually use. Still, I thought we had an understanding. Emergencies, sure. Big life events, okay within reason. But I wasn't the bank. I wasn't the party planner. And I definitely wasn't expecting what I saw on that credit card statement. What came next made everything before feel like a warm-up. It wasn't just about the money. It was about what they did behind my back, how they used my help, twisted the story, and shut me out completely. And when I confronted them, that's when the real damage began. The charge had been sitting there for days, maybe longer, but I hadn't noticed it until that night. $3,200 to Party Paradise. I hadn't authorized anything like that. And the deeper I looked, the worse it got. Elite catering, Baby Luxe boutique, custom embroidery, premier photography, all of them listed on my card, all of them charged in person. I remember staring at the screen, trying to breathe through the slow rising wave of disbelief. The card hadn't been stolen. No one had hacked my account. It was my mother's emergency card, the one I gave her last year when Dad had that heart scare. I had been clear only for true emergencies, medical bills, urgent home repairs. That was it. I asked the credit rep for the transaction dates. He told me April 15th through 18th. Right around the time I'd vaguely heard they were doing something for Brooke's baby shower. I hadn't been invited. I'd assumed the details had gotten lost in a shuffle, or I was just the last to be notified. It never occurred to me I'd been left out on purpose. After the call ended, I opened Instagram. Brooke posts everything, every smoothie, every ultrasound, every outfit she's bought for the baby. And there it was, a rooftop venue with flower arches and balloon walls, tables lined with silver cutlery, a cake that looked like something from a magazine, guests in coordinated outfits laughing under string lights. In every corner of every frame you could see the money that had been spent. My money. What stopped me cold were the party favors. Tiny embroidered onesies that said things like Future CEO and Mommy's Boss Baby. Custom gift bags filled with high-end baby care items, each monogrammed with a guest's name. The balloon backdrop said, "Welcome Baby Whitman" in giant metallic letters. I looked for myself in the photos, in the captions, in the comments. I wasn't in any of them. I called my cousin Liz. She'd been tagged in at least 5 of the photos. "Oh, it was beautiful," she said, all breathless and glowing. "Brooke's sister planned everything down to the minute." "Didn't you get the invite? I figured you couldn't come because of work." "No," I said slowly. "I never got an invitation." There was a pause. "That's odd," Liz said, her tone shifting. "Especially since, well, never mind." "No what?" She hesitated. "It's just that your mom was telling everyone how generous you were, how you'd funded the whole thing. People were saying you're the reason it all came together." I thanked her and hung up. The room was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. I sat still for a long time just looking at nothing. They'd used my card, not just for something minor, but for a full-scale event. They hadn't asked. They hadn't even told me, and they'd made sure I wasn't there. The next morning, I called my mother. She answered like it was any other day. "Hi, sweetheart. I was just thinking about you." "Mom," I said, "I need to talk to you about my credit card. There are over $7,500 in charges from April for catering, party supplies, decorations." She didn't miss a beat. "Oh, that. Yes, we used your emergency card. We didn't think you'd mind, since it's family." "You didn't think I'd mind," I repeated. "You used my emergency card for a party, one I wasn't even invited to." "Well," she said in that soft, condescending tone she always used when I didn't agree with her, "we figured it might be uncomfortable for you. You know, being single and all that baby talk. We didn't want you to feel out of place." There was a long silence. "And your name is in the thank you cards," she added brightly. "Brooke made sure to include you as a sponsor." "A sponsor," I said. "Mom, I didn't sponsor anything. I didn't even know about it." "You're being dramatic," she replied, her voice sharpening. "You've been so tight with money lately, saying no to the Bali trip, the house loan. We knew you could afford it. You've always helped." I hung up before I said something I couldn't take back. I called my father next. Maybe he hadn't known. Maybe he'd be shocked. "Yeah, I knew," he said after I explained. "I don't see what the big deal is. Your brother's starting a family. You're doing well. We wanted the day to be special for them." "I wasn't even invited," I said quietly. "That was more Brooke's call," he said. "She felt you two don't connect. She didn't want any negativity. You tend to be a little critical." My fingers went numb. "And this wasn't the first time," he added. "We've used it for a few things here and there. Doctor's visits, the crib. You never noticed." I couldn't speak. "You're making this bigger than it needs to be," he said. "It's just family helping family." I ended the call. Then I texted Ryan. "We need to talk about the charges for the shower. I didn't approve them, and I expect repayment." He responded within minutes. "Seriously? You're making a thing out of this now?" "Mom said you were fine with it. You used my card without asking." "That's not fine. You always make everything about you. We didn't invite you because you're judgmental and cold. Brooke didn't want that around the baby. Maybe you're just jealous." Jealous? He ended with, "If you push this, don't expect to be part of your nephew's life." That might have been the end of it. But then, 2 hours later, Brooke posted a photo, a carousel of baby shower pictures. The last slide showed her smiling at the camera, holding her belly, with a caption that read, "Still glowing from the most amazing shower a girl could ask for. Rooftop views. Custom everything. Fully funded by our favorite fool. Some people don't understand family, but at least their credit cards work. Blessed #Whitman baby shower. #family funded." Underneath, Ryan had left a laughing emoji. And then the comments rolled in. "OMG savage. Hope she learns not to mess with the queen. Free party and still mad girl. Bye." I stared at the screen for a while. Then I wrote a comment. Just one line. "Fools done funding. Enjoy the shower." After that, I called my credit card company and froze the account. I reported every charge as unauthorized. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilt. That night, I sat in my apartment quiet. No TV, no music, just the sound of the city outside. The tears came slow, then fast, years of holding it in, of being the good daughter, the helper, the one who always made things work. And suddenly, I wasn't anymore. The phone lit up with missed calls and texts, but I let them sit. Then I called the one person I knew would answer with honesty, my best friend Carla. They did what she said after I told her everything. "They used my card," I repeated. "Sarah," she said, "that's not just wrong. That's theft." Her voice was steady, and in that moment I realized I'd been waiting years for someone to say it out loud. That night, Carla came over with dinner and a bottle of wine. She helped me list out next steps, not just financially, emotionally, legally, whatever it took. Because what they'd done wasn't just inconsiderate. It was the moment I stopped being their fallback plan. And I wasn't going back. I stayed home that weekend. I canceled my dinner plans, turned off notifications, and let the quiet stretch out through every room. It wasn't just about the charges anymore. It was the way the silence from my family said everything. The way my phone buzzed, not with apologies, but with more of the same confusion from relatives, half explanations from my parents, and nothing at all from Ryan or Brooke. By Sunday morning, the weight of it all landed. I'd spent years helping them, loan after loan, bills paid without hesitation, vacations turned into emergencies. And now this. I couldn't stop the loop in my head, every memory where I'd said yes when I should have asked more questions. Every moment I brushed off a small slight because I thought keeping peace meant keeping quiet. I called Carla again. She didn't ask questions, just listened while I repeated the same thoughts I'd already gone over a dozen times. "I feel like a fool," I said finally. "No," she told me. "You're a good person." And they counted on that. Later that night, I sat down at my desk and pulled out the old leather notebook I used for client planning. But instead of numbers, I started writing down every time I'd bailed them out. The tuition checks, the wedding, the short-term loans that never came back. It wasn't the total that stopped me. It was the pattern. I wasn't helping anymore. I was enabling. That Monday, I couldn't concentrate at work. I was running numbers, reading reports, but everything felt distant. At lunch, Marcus, one of our senior planners, noticed I'd barely touched my sandwich. "You good?" he asked. I hesitated. "Just some family stuff. Complicated." He nodded slowly. "Money involved." I looked up, surprised. "Yeah." He gave a small smile. "Been there." We sat outside on the bench near the back lot where it was quiet, and that's when Marcus shared his story. A brother who'd always had bad luck parents who'd never stopped smoothing things over. He talked about guilt, the kind that creeps in when you finally stop giving, the way it felt like punishment to draw a line. "What helped you?" I asked. "Therapy," he said, and realizing that helping someone doesn't always mean rescuing them. He wrote down a name, Dr. Patricia Thompson, and handed it to me. "She knows her stuff," he said, "especially with financial boundaries." That night, I booked an appointment. While I waited for the session, I started researching. I came across the term financial abuse, something I'd always associated with spouses or caretakers. But as I read more, I saw the same behaviors: guilt trips, emotional leverage, blurred lines between love and obligation. There was a forum Marcus had also recommended, private, anonymous. It was called Family Boundaries Financial Abuse Support. I created an account and posted a brief version of what had happened. I didn't expect much, but within hours, comments poured in, dozens of people with similar stories, not just sympathy, but understanding, advice, affirmation. One woman wrote, "You were excluded on purpose because they wanted what you give, not who you are." Another said, "It's not unloving to say no. It's self-respect." That night, I slept through the night for the first time in days. By the time I met with Dr. Thompson, I had pages of notes. She listened without interruption. When I finished, she said, "What you're experiencing is a type of grief. You're mourning the family you thought you had." I nodded. It's okay to feel angry or confused or guilty, but none of those feelings mean what they did was right. We talked through what boundary setting would look like, not as a punishment, but as a way to rebuild. If they wanted a relationship, it would have to be one based on mutual respect, not expectation. I started journaling each night, not just the facts, but what I was learning about myself. I wrote about how being the reliable one became my role so early I didn't even notice it forming, how no one ever directly asked for more, but somehow I always offered it, how I'd thought being generous meant being good. 3 weeks in, I took a weekend trip to a small cabin in the mountains. No phone service, no Wi-Fi, just quiet. I walked trails, made simple meals, and sat by the fire without any need to explain myself to anyone. When I came back home, there was a letter waiting for me from the credit card company. Their investigation was complete. The charges had been reversed. Permanently. A new card was issued with restricted access, no authorized users, no exceptions. That same afternoon, I got an email from one of the catering companies addressed to Ryan and Brooke, but CC'd to me. They'd received notice the payment had been withdrawn. A balance of $850 was due within 10 days, or it would be turned over to collections, and that was just the first of several. By the following Friday, my parents had started calling again. This time, not about the charges, but about the fallout. My mother's voicemail said, "I don't know what you think you've accomplished, but you've put the family in a terrible position." My father's text was short. "You could have handled this privately. This is too far." I didn't respond. The next day, the messages started coming from cousins, distant relatives, people I hadn't spoken to in years. "Your mom's heartbroken. I don't know what really happened, but this isn't worth tearing apart a family. Come on, Sarah. You're better than this." It didn't take long before someone forwarded me the group message my mom had sent, a long paragraph full of half-truths. Sarah agreed to cover the shower, but later changed her mind. "She's bitter about Ryan starting a family when she hasn't. Please support them during this unfair time." The story had changed. Again. I let it sit. I didn't argue. I didn't reply. But behind the scenes, I took the next step. I called a financial attorney and scheduled a consultation, because silence was no longer an option. And if they wanted to keep rewriting the story, I was going to start writing it down myself properly, legally, and with every boundary in place. The appointment with the attorney was on a Tuesday afternoon. I met Rachel Bennett in a quiet office near the courthouse, modest, not flashy. She was maybe in her 40s, calm voice, no wasted words. After I laid out everything, charges, the card, the Instagram post, the family fallout, she leaned back and asked one question. "Do you want to press charges?" "No," I said. "I want it to stop, and I want the money back." She nodded. "Then we'll start with a formal demand letter. It shows you're serious, but gives them a chance to resolve this without court." That night I reviewed the draft she sent over. It spelled everything out plainly: the unauthorized use of the card, the total amount charged, and a request for full repayment within 30 days. No interest, no penalties, just repayment and a commitment not to repeat it. She included language about potential next steps, but it wasn't threatening. It was clear, firm, professional. We sent the letter by certified mail to my parents' house. The response came faster than I expected. By the next morning, my phone had lit up with messages. My mother's voice filled the voicemail box, crying, rambling about how I was tearing the family apart. My father's text was longer this time, full of disappointment. "This is family. You don't sue family. It was a misunderstanding, and now you're making it public." Andrew didn't message me directly, but Brooke posted a video online the same day, tear-soft music in the background, talking about feeling abandoned in her final trimester, betrayed by someone they trusted. She didn't say my name. She didn't have to. Then came the social media posts. Photos of baby items with captions like, "Real love shows up, not Sue's." A photo of the nursery with the comment, "Building our life even without certain people." I didn't respond, but I didn't block them either. I asked Carla to keep an eye on what was being said. We saved screenshots just in case. One message did catch me off guard. It came from Brooke's sister, Megan, the one who had helped plan the shower. She wrote, "I just found out the truth. Brooke told me you offered to pay for everything. I didn't realize you hadn't even been invited. I'm so sorry I helped organize something that hurt you. I didn't know what to say to that. So I just replied, 'Thank you for telling me.'" Later that week, I sat down with Dr. Thompson again. "They're escalating because you're breaking a pattern," she said. I nodded. She explained that people often react strongest right before the boundary finally holds. I didn't have to respond to every post or message. I just had to stay consistent. So I did. I blocked my family on social media. I created a filter on my email that sent their messages to a folder I could check when I was ready. I kept every voicemail, every text. I wrote down what I remembered about past financial help, dates, amounts, promises. And then I took a step I hadn't considered before. I joined an in-person support group. They met at a community center on Wednesday nights, small group folding chairs, coffee in a silver carafe near the door. It wasn't dramatic or emotional, just people sharing what had happened to them, how they handled it, what they were still learning. One woman, her name was Denise, talked about loaning money to her sister for years. No payback, no thanks, just growing expectations. "It's not the money," she said. "It's that they don't see you anymore, just what you give." I knew what she meant. Someone else shared how they'd missed their nephew's graduation after setting boundaries, and how the family blamed them for the distance. Another person talked about being painted as cold, unforgiving, like protecting yourself was the same thing as cutting everyone off. I sat and listened, and for the first time I didn't feel like I had to explain anything. Back at home, I kept journaling, not just about what had happened, but what I wanted from my life going forward. What kind of sister I wanted to be, what kind of daughter, and what kind of woman I wanted to become outside of all of that. A few days later, I received an update from the credit card company. Their investigation had been finalized. Every charge was reversed. A new card had been issued under tighter security protocols. Only I could approve charges now, even in emergencies. They advised me to inform the vendors directly that payment would need to be collected from the parties who ordered the services. I made a few polite calls, sent some emails. The responses were short, professional, but the reaction on the other end must have been loud, because within 48 hours Andrew called. "Why would you do that?" he asked. "You know we can't pay this all at once." I kept my tone calm. "You didn't ask if I could. You just did it. Now the vendors are asking you. That's how it should have been from the start. You're punishing us. I'm holding you accountable." He hung up. The next knock came from my parents. They showed up unannounced on a Sunday morning, just as I was leaving for groceries. My mom had tears in her eyes. My dad stood behind her, arms crossed. "We can't believe you'd actually go through with this," she said. "Jessica's stressed. The baby's due soon. This could push her into labor." "You made those decisions," I said. "I didn't ask you to. I didn't even know." "But you have the money, Sarah," she whispered. "You've always had the money." I paused. Then I said, "Having money doesn't mean I owe it to you." They left without saying much else. I sat on my porch afterward, keys still in hand, letting the wind blow across the open driveway. It was the first time I'd stood my ground and not felt guilt tie itself around my chest. It didn't feel good, but it felt clear. A few days later, Dr. Thompson and I talked about next steps. She suggested I consider a structured conversation, a mediated meeting, where everything could be laid out clearly, with someone neutral in the room. I wasn't sure they'd agree, but when I proposed it, they did. Andrew, Brooke, my parents, all of them. The mediator scheduled us for the following week, a neutral location, set rules, time limits, and for the first time in years, I wouldn't be showing up to clean up a mess. I'd be showing up to draw a line. The meeting was held in a small conference room inside a local community center. Neutral walls, neutral chairs, one pot of coffee on a tray in the corner. The mediator, Kimberly Jackson, sat at the head of the table, clipboard in hand, calm voice, no-nonsense tone. She started by laying out the ground rules: no interrupting, no raised voices, and no personal attacks. Everyone nodded, though no one made eye contact with me. I'd prepared myself for a lot. What I hadn't expected was how steady I felt once I sat down. Kimberly turned to me first. "Sarah, go ahead." I took a breath. "I want to be clear about what this is," I said. "This isn't about the money alone. It's about the choices that were made with no communication, no consent, and no inclusion." I laid out the events, the emergency card, the charges, the Instagram post, the exclusion from the shower. I brought printed statements and screen captures. I didn't raise my voice, and I didn't soften the facts. I've spent years helping this family when it was needed. But this wasn't help. It was theft. And I was made into a public joke afterward. "That's not just a financial violation. It's personal." Kimberly nodded. "Thank you. Sarah will circle back with your expectations. Let's hear from the rest of the family now." My mother spoke first. "We should have asked," she said. "I see that now. But we thought it was something you would have done anyway. You've always helped." "You didn't invite me," I said. She looked down. "We thought it might be uncomfortable," she murmured. "All the talk about babies. You're still single. And we didn't want you to feel left out." "That's exactly what happened," I said. "You left me out." Kimberly stepped in. Karen, that may have been well-intentioned, but it was an assumption about Sarah's emotional state, not a conversation with her. My father added, "We didn't handle it well. That much is obvious. We've come to rely on Sarah more than we should have. It just became a habit." Then Andrew cleared his throat. "I still think this is being blown out of proportion," he said. "It was Mom's card. She had it. I didn't think it was a big deal." "You planned a 5-figure event," I said quietly. "That's not a misunderstanding. That's a decision." Brooke spoke for the first time. "I honestly thought you were offering it as a gift," she said. "That's what your mom said, that you wanted to make the day special. Then why wasn't I invited?" I asked. She hesitated. "We just didn't think you'd want to come." Kimberly held up her hand. Let's shift to resolution. Sarah, you mentioned expectations. Can you outline them? I opened the folder in front of me. I want the money repaid, I said. Not with interest, not all at once. I've created a 12-month plan, interest-free with equal monthly payments. That's more generous than a bank would offer. I slid copies across the table. I also want written acknowledgement from each of you, just a simple signed note that what happened was wrong and won't happen again. My mother opened her mouth but closed it again. Third, I continued no more financial involvement of any kind without a signed agreement. No favors, no co-signing, no cards. That boundary isn't negotiable. Kimberly asked, "Anything else?" Yes. A 3-month pause in communication, unless it's related to the repayment schedule. I need space. My parents nodded slowly. My mother sighed. This all just feels so cold. It's structured, I said. So this doesn't happen again. Andrew looked over the payment schedule. You expect us to pay this while we're about to have a newborn. I expected to be treated like a family member, I replied. Not a credit card. Brooke looked at the mediator. So if we don't sign this, Kimberly was calm. Sarah would be within her rights to pursue civil recovery or press criminal charges. This is her attempt to settle privately. Andrew muttered something under his breath but signed the agreement. Brooke followed. My parents took longer. My father signed first. My mother hesitated, then signed without looking at me. As we packed up, Brooke stood and crossed her arms. I guess you don't care what your nephew hears when he grows up, that his aunt abandoned the family. I stood, met her eyes. He'll have the parents he has, I said. Whatever he learns about respect, he'll learn from you. They left before I did. Kimberly stayed behind to confirm copies would be mailed. I thanked her and stepped out into the afternoon sun. For the first time in weeks, my hands weren't shaking. The real test, though, was still ahead. Agreements are easy to sign. Living by them, that would take something more. The first month passed more smoothly than I expected. My parents made their initial repayment on time, automated transfer, no commentary. Communication was brief, but civil. I got a check-in text from my mom that said, "Hope you're well," and I answered with a simple "thanks you too." Andrew and Brooke sent their payment the day before it was due. No messages, no thank you, just the transfer and a payment note that read, "For repayment as agreed." The second month followed the same pattern. Quiet, predictable. I kept to my side of the agreement and gave everyone space. I stayed off social media, didn't reach out, and continued meeting with Dr. Thompson every other week. The third month, though, didn't go as smoothly. Andrew and Brooke missed the due date. No heads up. No apology. 4 days later, I got a message from Brooke. "We've had some unexpected expenses with the baby. We'll get it to you as soon as we can." I replied with the same firmness I'd used during the mediation. The payment plan was created with room for new expenses. "Please make the scheduled transfer by the end of the week." They sent it the next day. But the tone had shifted. 2 weeks later, my mother called out of the blue. "Your nephew's here," she said. "Ethan, born last night, 7 pounds 1 ounce. Dark hair like Ryan had when he was little." I waited. "I thought you'd want to come see him," she added. "We're all at the hospital. I'll send a gift," I said. "But I won't be visiting during the cooling-off period." "Oh, Sarah," she said softly, "this is different. This is his birth." "The boundary applies here, too," I said. "We all agreed to it." She didn't argue, but I could hear the disappointment in her voice. We ended the call soon after. I sent a gift basket to the hospital, soft blanket, newborn clothes, organic care items. Nothing over the top. I had it delivered with a handwritten card. "Welcome to the world, Ethan. Wishing you a bright, healthy future." I didn't hear back. The next few months were steady. My parents stayed on schedule. Andrew and Brooke continued making their payments, just barely, but they made them. I kept myself busy. I joined a weekend hiking group, reconnected with a few old friends from college, Started attending workshops through work on women's financial wellness, something I'd always wanted to get more involved in, but hadn't had the bandwidth before. Around that time, I got promoted, senior financial advisor. I'd be managing a small team, and I'd finally get to help design new client programs. It felt like something had opened up again, space I hadn't realized I'd lost, filling in the gaps left behind by the constant pressure to fix things for other people. I didn't tell my family. I also didn't share it online, not because I wasn't proud, but because I'd learned what my milestones often triggered: questions, requests, expectations. Instead, I celebrated quietly. Dinner with Carla, a card from Marcus left on my desk, a hike that weekend with my Saturday group overlooking a ridge lined with pine trees. I started dating again, too. Thomas was someone I met through a friend landscape architect raised in Minnesota. One older sister, one golden retriever. He was calm, steady, asked questions without rushing. I told him early on that my relationship with my family was complicated, and he didn't flinch. "I get it," he said. My mom and stepdad didn't speak for 5 years. We kept it simple: dinners, walks, museums on Sunday afternoons. I didn't know where it would go, but I didn't feel like I had to carry anything on my own. Then a few days before Ethan's 6-month mark, I sat down at my desk and made a call to a financial planner I knew well, Rebecca, someone I'd worked with during my early years in the firm. "I want to set up a college trust," I told her. "It's for my nephew, but I don't want his parents to manage it. I want it structured so it's his when he turns 18, no matter what's happened by then." Rebecca walked me through the details: how to keep it anonymous, how to assign a trustee, how to make sure the money was protected, but accessible for education when the time came. It wasn't about recognition. It was about making sure that child had options, even if I wasn't in the picture. The paperwork was done by the end of the week. I added a simple note in the records: Ethan Whitman, for whatever dreams you choose to follow. 1 year after the baby shower, my mother asked to meet for coffee. Just the two of us. No mention of Brooke. No mention of Andrew. We met at a cafe downtown. She wore a navy sweater and had already ordered tea when I arrived. "I wanted to say something to you," she said, setting her cup down carefully. "I understand more now, about what happened, about why it hurt you the way it did." I waited. "It wasn't just the card," she said. "It was that we didn't ask, that we didn't invite you, that we made decisions without including you, and then tried to pass it off like it was kindness." She paused. "I'm sorry it took something this big for me to see it." I nodded. "It was never about the money," I said. "It was about respect." She looked at her tea. "Andrew and Brooke still don't see it that way. They think you pulled away when they needed you most." "I know," I said, "and that's their version to live with. But we know what happened." She didn't argue. We sat there a few more minutes, not saying much. Then I stood to leave. "I'm glad we talked," I said. "Me too," she whispered. Outside, the late afternoon sun had dropped behind the buildings. I pulled on my coat, walked 2 blocks to my car, and sat for a moment before starting the engine. It was the first time I'd left a family conversation without needing to go home and untangle what had just happened. Something had shifted. Not everything, but enough. And the rest would come in time. By the time Ethan turned 1, the repayment plan was complete. My parents had made their final payment 2 weeks early. I received a brief message from my father that read, "Final transfer done. Thank you for your patience." It was simple to the point. My mother followed up a few days later with a longer message asking if I might be open to visiting. Sometime soon, nothing specific, just a quiet lunch or maybe a walk. I said yes. We met at the park where she used to take us as kids. There was a new playground now and a few more benches, but the trees lining the walking path were still the same. She told me she and Dad had started working with a financial advisor I'd once recommended. They were reviewing everything: retirement, downsizing, health planning. "It feels good to know we're standing on our own again," she said, then looked at me. "You helped us more than you know." We walked for a while without saying much more, and that was enough. Things with Andrew and Brooke, though, were different. They completed their payments on time, barely. Their final transfer came on the very last day of the 12th month. No message, no acknowledgement. After that, contact stopped almost entirely. They didn't invite me to Ethan's first birthday party. I found out about it through my cousin Liz, who sent me a photo of the cake. Blue frosting, a little crown on top, and Ethan's name spelled out in gold letters. The message beneath the post said, "Celebrating our sweet boy with the people who've been there from the start." I didn't reply. Instead, I went about my day, took a yoga class, ran errands, made dinner. I'd already dropped off a birthday card the day before, along with a soft book and a donation confirmation for another small deposit into his college trust. That trust had grown slowly over the year. I added to it every few months, quietly, no names attached. Just one account for one child who had no part in the mess that came before him. A few weeks after the party, I heard from a friend that Andrew and Brooke were telling people I was too focused on my career to be involved in Ethan's life, that I'd chosen distance and missed out on everything important. I didn't respond. By then, I'd stopped needing to explain. I'd also started building something new for myself. I joined a professional women's group focused on financial literacy and advocacy. We met once a month, small circle, real conversations. Women from different backgrounds, different industries. We traded stories, offered advice, helped each other navigate the situations no one talks about out loud. That led to speaking engagements, podcasts. One Saturday seminar where I shared my own journey, not just the practical parts, but what it meant to reset your role within a family when your identity had always been the fixer. Afterward, a woman in her 60s came up and said, "That could have been me 20 years ago." I nodded. I think it's more common than we know. At work, I kept thriving. I launched a new financial counseling program for women in transition, those leaving marriages, changing careers, caring for parents. It became the part of my job I loved most. And at home, things were calm. I'd bought a condo 6 months earlier. Nothing extravagant, just enough space, good light, and a small balcony with room for a table and 2 chairs. I never mentioned the purchase to my family. Not because I was hiding anything, but because I'd learned some milestones were better held close. One afternoon, I was sitting out there drinking coffee and flipping through a book when Thomas showed up with lunch. He was holding a bag from my favorite cafe and a little potted fern he'd picked up on the way. "You look like you could use something green," he said. We ate on the balcony while the breeze moved through the trees. Talked about his new project, some garden design for a historic home upstate, and made loose plans for a trip in the fall. He didn't ask about my family, and I didn't bring them up. Later that night, after he'd gone, I looked through an old box of papers I'd kept, notes from the mediation, copies of the repayment schedule, printouts of messages I hadn't read in over a year. I stacked them neatly, tied them with a ribbon, and placed the bundle at the back of the file drawer. It wasn't erasing what had happened, it was just marking it as finished. Some things weren't meant to be forgotten, but they also didn't need to be carried everywhere. What came next was mine to decide. A few weeks after tucking those papers away, I visited the cabin again, the same one I'd rented that first weekend alone when everything was still raw. This time the air felt lighter. I walked the trails at my own pace, stopped by the lake to skip a few stones, then sat out on the porch, wrapped in a flannel blanket, just listening to the trees shift in the breeze. No agenda, no noise, just quiet. That night I journaled for the first time in months. I wrote about what had changed not just around me, but within me. I hadn't cut anyone off in anger. I'd just stepped back until the shape of things became clearer, and in that distance I'd found something I didn't even know I needed the space to be seen as more than what I could give. My relationship with my parents had settled into something steady. We spoke every couple of weeks now, usually by phone. There were no more surprise requests, No guilt woven into conversations, just updates, weather, books we were reading. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. Andrew and Brooke stayed distant. I'd heard through my aunt that they were doing fine. Brooke had gone back to teaching yoga part-time, and Andrew had switched jobs again, something in tech sales this time. I hadn't seen Ethan in person since he was born, but every quarter I added to his trust. It wasn't about the thank you. It was about making sure he had a door waiting for him, even if I never knocked. Thomas and I kept growing together gently without pressure. He never tried to fix anything, never pushed me to open up faster than I was ready. He just stayed, showed up, made space. And I kept showing up for myself, too. There's a strength that comes with finally knowing where your line is. It doesn't make you hard. It makes you clear. And clarity, I've learned, is one of the most loving things you can offer, not just to others, but to yourself. I used to believe being generous meant saying yes. Now I know generosity includes knowing when to say no and meaning it. Not from resentment, but from respect. What happened with my family wasn't just about a credit card or a baby shower. It was about the quiet agreements we make over time, who shows up, who doesn't, and what we're told to accept in the name of love. And the truth is, love without respect isn't love at all. It's obligation dressed up to look like loyalty. So if you're listening and you've been carrying the weight of being the dependable one, the responsible one, the person who always fixes things, just know this: you're allowed to step back. You're allowed to ask for reciprocity. And you are absolutely allowed to protect your peace. Your kindness should never come at the cost of your dignity. Thanks for sharing this time with me. If this story touched something in you, I'd love to know. Feel free to share your own experience in the comments, or simply take a moment to breathe and know you're not alone. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this one, you're always welcome here. Take care of yourself. You matter. You always have.